Hey everybody, it's Thursday. We are here today to talk about some exciting stuff. As you all know, the Dirge of Valiros. I think I'm saying that right, but we'll find out in just a minute because we are talking to the man himself, Gary Astleford. And of course, today is Thursday, which means it's Thursday. And on Thursday, we talk about all kinds of stuff related to the adventure game engine. Powers many of the most popular games made by Green Ronin Publishing. And hey, Duke, good to see you, friend. You're gonna like Gary, friends. Gary and I have a history. It dates way back to my time in California when I worked on a video game called WildStar. And Gary and I worked together. Hi, Gary.
Hey, Troy.
How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm super excited because, when I saw your name on this, I was like, wait, Gary? I know Gary. Hey, David, good to see you. Pepper gravy unit standing by. I do like a pepper gravy. Gary, I got to warn you. There's shenanigans that occur, ne'er-do-wells, if you will, and they all hang out in the chat, and they're just obsessed with gravy. Swan says you were a WildStar head. So Gary, what did you do over at Carbine?
Oh, I started out as a game designer, and I moved into the narrative department eventually.
That's right.
Yeah, when they shut WildStar down, I was a principal narrative designer for WildStar. But unfortunately, we all know how that story ends.
Yeah.
Or maybe we don't, but
Yeah, so on for WildStar, I was a producer and a community director, and also designed, with help, of course, the housing system, and worked on that kind of social stuff. And you and I got along swimmingly. It was a wonderful time. It was a great. I mean, the game was so beautiful and so fun, and it had such a great vibe. I think it could have done well. But who's going to say why? Not me.
well, as Swan has just commented, MMOs are a cruel master. They're a very tough market to break into.
Yes, yeah, they are. They are indeed, and they're a lot of work.
Yes.
But when I saw your name, I was like, Gary, doing TTRPG stuff, but you have got quite a history. I mean, you've been doing this for a minute. You're not new to this whole endeavor. Talk to me a little bit about your experience, what you've worked on, and we'll get into Dirge here in a second.
Okay, well, let's go back in the Wayback Machine.
Yes.
Let's see. Back in the 90s, I used to just write up, rules modifications for the game systems I was playing, and I would post that stuff online, like free content. I guess what you might call a early internet content creator. And I always wanted to work right for the games, and so I kept at it and kept at it and kept at it, and finally, I was given an opportunity to write a polygon, like an article for Star Wars for Dungeon Magazine.
Cool.
And at that point, it turned into me going to conventions and meeting people, shaking hands, handing out business cards and writing samples and saying, please, 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 can I work for you? And it just kind of snowballed from there. It's a very different environment these days, but back then, D20, there was the D20 boom, which fueled a lot of real creativity. But I was privileged enough to work for a lot of the better publishers, Green Ronin included.
Yeah. You mean you've got Cubicle 7 on here? You've got Fantasy Flight, Wizards of the Coast, Games Workshop. Yeah, some great names on here. Anyone I'm missing? I mean, just really great stuff, and on some great titles as well. I mean, just some really good. Was it so the Clone Wars campaign guide? Yeah, you've done a ton of stuff. Is there a particular project that you look back on and you're like, yes, like were you excited to be doing to do Star Wars stuff, or?
Oh, I mean, everyone was exciting as they came along. But I think the first one I was really excited about was working on Midnight, because Midnight was one of the D20 campaign settings that I always really liked. It was very dark and I was very happy to work on that. It was one of the ones I wanted to work on. In addition, Star Wars. I've been a Star Wars fan since practically birth,
Yeah.
so that was a big deal. Uh, Working on Warhammer Fantasy Role Playing for Green Ronin was awesome. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, every new step forward felt like I was breaking a barrier down, um, working on the things that I really enjoyed playing and being entertained by. So
It does
yeah.
something to your perspective on the world, doesn't it? When you're able to say, I'm doing the thing I love. I mean, I'm able to connect and with this IP that sort of it sort of changes your role from a participant in a a medium to a creator of it. It's a really exciting transition, for sure. And so awesome. Now let's get into this. So talk to me about give me just the thumbnail sketch. Most folks have, I know that everybody in chat has looked at that QR code and they've taken a picture of it and they've scanned it with their phone, and you are now at the Green Ronin online store and you are purchasing it. Or you've already picked it up, or maybe some of you are on the VIP list and you got it from me for free. However the case may be, we'll be opening it up here in just a second. And so give me the thumbnail sketch of sort of what this is about.
So the venture is about music as magic. It revolves around this thing called the Dirge of Valiros, um, which is it wasn't necessarily created as a bad thing. It wasn't created as a destructive piece of magic,
Yeah.
but over the as it passed into legend, people really focused on the negative aspects of this thing. So everybody thinks of it as this magical spell. Basically, it's a
Yeah.
piece of music that you play, and when you play, it destroys the world. Um, so there's this cult, an elven apocalypse doomsday cult that wants to get the dirge and use it to bring about another cataclysm.
Nice. I love that. And hey, hello to Lovelinator. Good to see you, Stormer, as well. Am I missing anybody? I say Swan May, you're there. I'd love to see you hanging out in chat. If you haven't said hello, make sure you do. And if you've got any questions for Gary, go ahead and drop them in chat, and we'll tackle them. So I love that. I love the notion of it. And what's funny, and you have nothing to do with this, but on the cover of the art, there's a conductor getting ready to, I suppose, destroy the world, and there's a trombonist. We have a person who plays the trombone, and he is not happy with that trombone. He's like, it doesn't have two horns and two top knots. Can't, but as a person who grew up, I was kicked out of band. I was a trombonist, but I used my trombone as a weapon, much like the gentleman in this picture,
Mm.
and they kicked me out of band. So as a player of this, without giving away too much, are you looking to thwart the cult? Is that sort of the idea?
It really depends. There are several options for starting the
Oh, nice.
adventure.
Okay.
So you can come into it, maybe a collector wants you to find the musical notes somewhere, the actual sheet music for this thing. You could stumble upon a fragment of it, and that might spur your group to go looking for it. But ultimately, the cult is looking to get this thing for bad reasons.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
They want to do dirty to the world. So
Yeah.
um,
In a world that's already been done so dirty,
it could
that's
always
rough.
get dirtier.
That's right. That's right. David Bullock says suddenly 2025 makes sense. Yeah. Someone's out there playing the dirge. Cease and desist, I say.
Mhm.
Okay. So this is our PDFs our work is just gorgeous. Let me do a quick flip. There we go. There's the bonus in all his glory. Quite a good-looking group of characters. My favorite is that little bug person playing just a little tiny, what looks like a flute, just a sweet little flute to destroy the world. Yeah, David Bog says, "Is it safe to assume this isn't polka?" What is the notion of the music? Is it's an orchestral piece? It's a
It's an
you're
orchestral piece. A quartet could play it.
oh,
But the way I designed it was that the larger the group playing, if an orchestra playing this thing would cause massive damage,
I
whereas a quartet
see.
could do fairly localized damage.
So they're looking
So
to do some real damage here on the cover.
yeah.
I like that. There's a Gary. Were you not seeing Gary earlier?
Who?
I believe Duke said, "Oh, hi, there's a Gary." Like they were just seeing you for the first time. Hey, Peter, good to see you. Thanks for joining. Okay, so our credits and all right. So here's where I get to pause us and say, we'll talk about this more probably on another program. But if you take a look in the bottom right of that PDF, you will see something new. That's our new logo. We've got the former Green Ronin in all his Pantalonus glory was beautifully wrought, a nicely uh, uh, created piece of art, but it was created back when before there was internet. And so, unfortunately, his shape just didn't quite fit with all the things that we needed to do. And so, we're introducing this new logo, and I think it's sharp. I really, really like it. New logo, lore drop, exactly. So if you're looking, you're like, hey, wait a minute, that doesn't look like the regular logo. Well, it is now, and we're gonna share it out, more publicly in the coming days. But for now, you get to look at it, and if you purchase it, you get to have it as your very own. And then we're going to get into there's some fun history with the older Ronin, and it has been. I'm wondering if you mean the 1900s or Swan May. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's take to the next. Here we go. Okay. So you talked a little bit about how the sort of choices that they can make, the kind of adventure that the GM might want to run. Talk to me about sort of so it says the musical dirge, the God scream. That seems intense.
Hmm. The
What's that
God
about?
Scream, the God Scream is the cult. It's the Elvish cult that is
Ah,
seeking out the Dirge. Um, they were they've always been bad news, but they went underground after the cataclysm. They went into
ah,
hiding, and so they're very shadowy, sometimes figuratively so. They're very focused on sound and music. They're all
yeah.
musicians of one sort or another. They actually have a synesthesia where they can see sound, so
Ah,
it gives them a
cool.
couple of extra quirks and benefits in gameplay. Um,
I love that. And so as far as the concept of music that destroys, where do you draw? Where did you draw your inspiration for that?
I don't know. It's not something that's new. It's not new. I mean, there's
Yeah,
fiction. There is fiction out there that where music is a magical thing.
yeah, yeah.
But at the time, writing the adventure, it just resonated with me. It was something that I wanted to look into and pursue and kind of use as a thematic with the cult, with the spell. They're musicians. They're into sound, and it is everything kind of came and worked together.
I like
There
that
was
a
this,
lot. So talk to me about your creative process. Like, do you have a bank of ideas or things that you sort of are percolating over time, or are you struck by inspiration and you kind of get it all out at once? How do you work in that way?
it comes as it comes. So I
Yeah.
can't, I really can't plan for it, but I'll make notes. I'll have an idea. I'll write it down. In this particular case, I think I just sent a pitch in and I said, "Hey, I had this idea. Are you interested in this?" And they were. So I just rode with it.
I love
But
that.
it's also, the whole music and sound aspect permeates the adventure as well. There's a specific encounter uh, about midway through that focuses on sound insofar as the action is concerned. If you're familiar with William Gibson, he wrote this story called Johnny Mnemonic, which got turned into a movie and all that. But
Oh yeah,
there's a
yeah.
there's a section in that movie in the book, or rather the short story, where Molly has a combat engagement with this like vat-grown assassin, but they're on this thing called the killing floor, which is suspended above the city. And when they move, it makes the cables creak, and it kind of makes this horrible sound,
Yeah.
and that inspired me to write that first encounter. Which I don't know if
Very cool.
we're gonna get to it, but
We might not, but we've got some time. We can play around with it. So I'm jumping to the next page. Finding a fragment. Talk to me a bit about what we're talking about here.
it's that's a this is how you involve the players in the adventure. So
Nice.
one of the ways to do it is the adventurers find a fragment of the dirge, a page from the sheet music, and it's going to be something. It's not going to be. It may give them a stanza. It may give them just a little bit of the music they can play, and not enough to really have any magical effect. But it's also old, and it's also sort of unusual and unique, and so it might be something a collector would be interested in. If we have
Uh,
musical characters, they might be
oh
drawn
yeah.
to investigate it. So
Nice. I love that. Okay, so let me. All right. So okay, this is great. So this is tests and rumors. This is sort of helping them along their way, right?
mhm, this is when they go out looking for information on the dirge, and this is what they might discover about it, whether that's
Lovely.
fact or fail, not fact, based on the success of their role.
Nice. Okay, so we're looking at some more of. So now we get into a little bit more of the God Scream. What a great
Mhm.
name! That is just such a perfect name. I love it. Let me jump to the next page here.
Ah,
Okay, this is what you're talking about, right?
I was, yes.
How
This,
great! I love that.
yeah, it's
Very great.
basically a suspension bridge,
Awesome.
and
And so now, does this? What are we introducing here that's new by way of sort of class or that kind of element for the Dirge of Valiros?
as far as classes are concerned, I mean,
Yeah,
it's your standard fantasy age technofantasy stuff,
gotcha.
but the that particular encounter includes a lot of variables because everybody's seen Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yeah,
Suspension bridges are just wonderful as far as how
they're cool.
exciting, yeah, how exciting an encounter can be if you're crossing a bridge like that and you have to deal with somebody, say, on a flying bat who's dropping bombs on you. So,
As you do. Yeah,
hmm.
yeah. I love that. That's great. Let's see here. It's a long way down. Talking about once a place of culture. Talk to me about where we're at here. Where are we moving into?
Okay, now we're actually talking about Valiros.
Yeah,
In the great distant past, Valiros was a city, a Saurian city, so those reptilian type folks,
yeah.
and it was a center of art and culture and civilization prior to the cataclysm. And after the cataclysm, it was destroyed. Um,
Got you.
so this is when the players arrive in Valiros. Finally, they uh, they get to see what has become of the great city of art and culture that the Saurians had built.
Got it. And then that is the origin of the dirge.
The Dirge's maestro
Yeah.
was a resident of Valiros, and
I suppose
he
here
had
we're looking at
the ruins.
Valeros.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ruins of Valeros. Lovely. Okay, cool. Look at this. All right, so let's talk. I love that art. This is great stuff. What are we talking about here? God Scream, and I've got a little thing that's occluding my vision here, but it says
hmm
scavengers.
Yeah, this is detailing an encounter with some Godscream cultists who are scavenging through the ruins.
Nice. Okay, desperately seeking.
Valuables.
Yeah,
Yeah.
valuables, anything. Okay, got you. Concert hall. Okay, is there?
I mean, obviously, there's going to be spoilers here.
Yeah. We'll stop. I mean, stop before I get into anything too deep. But I mean, it's okay that we can just sort of discuss, some of these things and share a little peek into the. Um, sorry, my phone is Google's deciding to transcribe my discussion, which is weird. Okay, so great. There's the layer. This is fun. Good map for folks to utilize. And let's see here. Okay, so is there a particular page? I don't want to, give out spoilers, but is there some detail on some of the mechanics of the adventure of the experience?
There are mechanics about playing the dirge or its alternate form,
Yeah,
the less destructive form. There are mechanics for that in there.
nice.
There's a lot of information on the cultists. There are some new monsters, some new critters you get to fight,
Ooh, cool.
because there's nothing better than fighting mutant somethings.
Yeah, right. It gets the job done, right? I mean,
It does.
that's yeah, super super fun. And so, can we? How much? I don't want to show anything that would spoil it, but if I go to, let's see, I'm flipping through here. The concert hall looks great too, by the way. That's
Yeah,
a nice,
you can't have an adventure about music without having a concert hall.
right? Yeah, exactly, exactly. Let's see. There's something. Okay, let's jump to probably page. What page is this? 18. Take a look at that and tell me if it's going to give too many good things away.
Uh, Probably not. It's mostly okay about the cult. The cult
Yeah,
is led by what is called the voice of Urshi. Urshi is the goddess that these elvish cultists worshipped. She
yeah.
originally began as like this sort of a healing nature goddess who was all about interring the dead and putting people to rest. But it got twisted over time, and now she's more about entropy and decay and destroying things.
Got you.
And the voice of Urshi, who we're seeing here, is the leader of the cult now. And it includes a detailed history for her and her specific powers that she can employ.
Got it, got it. And so I'm looking at, so if we go back here, Bombardier, these are members of the cult with specific roles,
Hmm.
like bat
Yeah.
handlers. I love that. Very cool. Let me take another look back. There we go. Allies and adversaries. Nice. Okay. Excellent. And what the cult, was it modeled after a particular thing? Did you sort of what were your inspos, or what could a GM look to sort of fill out the general vibe of the cultists?
Well, they're nihilists. You know,
Mm,
they believe in destruction for destruction's sake. They're extremists. I tend to get I can get pretty dark in my material sometimes,
okay.
and I didn't shy away from that with these particular people. They're bad. They're not healthy
Right. Yeah.
mentally.
Yeah.
So
Unwell. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, um, you just look at any historical cult um, and look for inspiration there. I look for inspiration in movies and books. Thinking about the snake cult from Conan the Barbarian as an example.
Sure.
You know where these people will give their lives are forfeit if asked of them. They see that sacrificing themselves is for the benefit of the cult is it's not something they're going to argue about. They're just going to do it.
They're gonna do it. Right.
Hmm.
Right.
And
And so
fighting an adversary like that is scary because they don't care what you do to them.
right. Yeah. And that really does inform the kind of how you will coordinate or play them, or even deal with them in general. I mean, anything goes. Symphonic gothic metal bands. Yeah, exactly. Cha- I do love this. Hold on, let me find it real quick. So Jonesy says "Battle of the Bands" time, which is hilarious. But then David said clearly, yeah, opposed by the theater kids, which is funny in a way because I know a lot of people who play TTRPGs have a deep, deep love and roots that go very deep into being theater kids, which is very true. But I do like this symphonic because they have a gothy kind of look to them. As nihilist as they may be, they like a fashion turn in fashion. So there are some. Are there some weapons and things like some tech that's introduced as it relates to this?
Oh yeah, the Dirge, rather not the Dirge, but the cult,
Yeah.
at least their leader does use sonic weapons, which
Oh.
makes sense. And assuming they've got synesthesia that allows them to see sound. Imagine what that would look like shooting a sonic weapon at somebody. You could see the sound waves in a different light, in a different way.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but yeah,
That
there's
is
some sonic weapons. There's a couple of other things that players can find and dig up in the ruins.
very cool. Yeah, there's even some instruments, right? Like a tech flute?
There is a tech flute. It's a Saurian technology that was lost during the Cataclysm, but players might be able to dig it up.
Very, very cool. Okay, so taking sort of one of the things that everyone loves about the adventure game engine is the notion of, let me grab Tempo here. So Tempo says, reminds me of the Orchestra Vardamten from Umbrella Academy. I don't remember that, but is that in a newer episode of Umbrella Academy, or is it in the
Was that season 2?
Yeah, was it season 2? Let us know. But yeah, so the adventure game engine as a toolbox is one of the things that people really love about all of the things that we do with Age and how you can kind of mix and match and add some stuff. Uh, Given your knowledge of other things that we've got cooking as far as the adventure game engine, or like could we what elements of this would you borrow for to tell a different story? Like are there aspects of this that you think would be really that would play well in, say, like, I don't know, a Cthulhu Awakens kind of thing? Or
Oh, certainly. You could adapt this for as a Cthulhu cult, as one of the mythos cultists who wants to do something that has to do with musical or sound. I mean, you go
yeah.
back to the mythos and the Piper,
Yes.
all that stuff with Lovecraft's you know bad guys and monsters.
Absolutely, and it fits so nicely. This nihilist cult has got a lot of, I keep thinking about what it would look like if you could see sound always, like if it was just a part of what you did. That is very fascinating. Are there elements of the cult that, that seeing sound, is that, what other sort of powers or abilities does that give them as it relates to, the players?
It usually allows them. They get bonus on perception to notice people who are moving or making noise.
Uh-huh.
They can technically see in the dark somewhat as long as there's noise to guide them, sound to guide them. And since they spend a lot of time in like the literal shadows, uh, this is something that they've developed over time and learned to perfect.
And so, is it pronounced triapede?
The
Or is it just
Triapede.
yeah, triapede?
That's a mutant monster that just
The
came to me one day.
horror of this.
But if you can imagine a 20-foot centipede with 3 heads, uh,
I can actually. It's very distressing. I love that. And so the maestro, is that the
that
maestro we're talking about?
that's
Uh-huh.
the maestro who wrote the Dirge of Valiros, Maestro
Wow.
Sisk.
Got it. Tempo says that they're not present in the television adaptation.
Okay,
Gotcha. That's why we're like, huh? Um, Very cool.
I've not seen anything outside of the television program for
Yeah,
Umbrella
me
Academy.
either. Yeah, yeah. It's and I haven't looked at the comics. I've always wanted to grab the comics, but I've got. I don't know if you have the same thing. I looked at your shelves back there. I've got so many comics and video games, like stacks that I haven't played yet, and I'm just like, adding another comic to the stack will either end up in an avalanche of pop culture that will kill me, or just add to my, like, the ever growing weight of stuff.
Well, any bibliophile, any book fan
Yeah,
knows that you can collect books forever
you
and
can.
never ever get around to reading them even as much as you might want to. And for me, it's the same with role playing games. I've been collecting them since I started playing,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
and I have a hard time letting go of my pack rat nature, and getting rid of them,
yeah. And I
even
am.
even if I've never played them.
Right, and that's tough. That is a tough one, especially when you create in the space as well, because there's such great references and
Hmm.
resources for you to kind of borrow and take inspiration from. Talk to me about. Do you have a creative process? So some of the folks that are in chat right now, they're part of our uh, the Age Creators Alliance, and so they're creating their own worlds and spaces under the Age license and publishing them on Drive Through RPG. And
Hmm.
so, talk to me a bit about your creative process as it relates to this stuff. And I'm always fascinated too. Do you have like a collection somewhere of tools, or a library of ideas that are waiting to be fleshed out? Like, give me a look into your brain.
I think I mentioned earlier that sometimes
Yeah.
I'll have an idea, I'll write it down, I'll come back to it later. Sometimes I'll forget about it. I've got several text files or documents on my hard drive that I probably should look at occasionally, that
Yeah.
where I've jotted ideas down and forgotten about them. So there's that. I can mine that for reference or for inspiration. Um, but generally speaking, brainstorming is a big thing for me,
Yeah.
especially when I'm working by myself. In my day job, I do a lot of collaboration with other people, and I really
Yeah.
enjoy collaborating with groups. But there's another muscle you have to use when you're doing it on your own, and I try to exercise that as much as I can. Um,
Now,
but
how do you do that? What's that process look like? Do you do a lot of whiteboarding or sort of mind mapping, or are you just letting it roll around in your brain?
I'll have that idea and I'll write it down on a piece of
Yeah.
paper, and then I'll start to think, okay, what can I relate to this idea? And sometimes I try to come out of left field. I try to do things that are not something you might expect. I try to take convention and sort of flip it.
Yeah.
Um, but outside of that, it's really just a matter of sitting down, having ideas. Sometimes I take things from dreams. I'll have weird dreams and I'll say, yeah, it
Oh,
was really weird. And it doesn't really translate well because you know how dreams get scattered after you
yes.
wake up. But
Yeah.
there's an element there's a piece you can pick out and embody somehow. And so I'll write down my dreams, that sort of thing too. Um,
Yeah, I
but
do love that. I love that feeling too of trying to search a fragment of a memory for what that dream meant, or what was so moving about it, or what made you wake up and go, huh? Or be just relieved that you're here and not wherever that was.
mhm.
Just very, very intense and fun. Yeah. But yeah, go on. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, 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 it's good. Uh, but the dreams, if say I'm watching a movie or I'm reading a book and I say that's an interesting idea, but it's not how I would have done it. I might take that and reskin it. Sometimes it's just a matter of taking one thing and uh, giving it a wrapper. So like in game design, you'll have an idea for a game, and you want to give it a wrapper which defines the setting and the narrative surrounding that idea. So, just like you were talking about this adventure, it starts out as a techno fantasy adventure, but what could we put it in a Cthulhu wrapper and make it a mythos adventure? Yes, very
Yeah,
easily.
yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. And so when you're working in the TTRPG space and you're developing stuff, uh, what is your how do you test things out, or what is that thing that you use to kind of prove out the experience, the adventure, the chapter? Talk to me about that a little bit.
You look at the numbers. I mean, if it's a mechanical thing, you look at the numbers and see how they perform.
Yeah,
You try to take things and put them at the end of the spectrum. So, like at the very worst, what could this do? You want to make sure the balance is there.
yeah,
Um, but the idea is also I've got a wife who's very well read, and so I'll say, hey, I had this idea about this. Has it been done before? And she'll, as like an encyclopedia, she'll just say, oh yeah, that's been
right.
done in this book by this author. Da, da, da. And if you're going to do something with it, you need to avoid this. Um,
Oh, that's great. That's
you
great
know,
though. Yeah,
so it's like having my own living encyclopedia with me. Um, but I also try to bounce ideas off friends. Getting other opinions is great. Like I said, working by yourself requires a certain discipline, certain kind of muscle you're working. But when you're working with a group, there's that collaboration, which is
yeah,
a wonderful experience to have. Um, so bouncing ideas off of people, it's like I don't like working in a vacuum,
right.
but I do like to bounce ideas off of folks without necessarily breaking my NDA. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and that's certainly, I think that's definitely understood, by especially in the space where you definitely want to keep your secret secret, but there are elements that you want to be able to kind of walk through the playground, as it were. And
mhm.
yeah, yeah, that makes a lot
and
of sense.
and the other thing is it's also important to accept criticism and accept feedback
Oh
uh,
yeah,
in a
yeah,
way, because you might not see something that somebody else sees as being obvious, and we oftentimes become very precious about the work we do,
hmm,
and we want to keep it ourselves. It's perfect. It came from sprang from the head of Zeus or whatever.
that's
Now
right. Yeah,
that's bunk. We
yeah, yeah,
it's very rare for an idea to come from your head that's
pure in
perfect right
form.
out. Yeah. So there's everything can be improved.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really enjoyed about working with you and talking with you. Is absolutely there is a an element of preciousness. Yeah, that's a really great way to frame it, where people just it's as though they've forgotten the function of what it is they're making, which is
Mhm.
essentially not for them to sit on a shelf somewhere for them to look at and marvel at what a beautiful, pure idea it was, but it is to in service to people playing games around the table. And so what do you do to take into account that experience to keep the player, sort of top of mind?
I always try to keep the player top of mind because
Yeah,
the game is there for the players. If you run a game as a game master, a dungeon master, everybody needs to have fun. You need to have fun, your players need to have fun, but the story is interactive.
yeah.
Everybody should have a role to play in making that story real. And if that takes it off the rails, so be it.
That's where it
Because
meant to. Yeah, that's where it was
yeah,
meant to be. Yeah,
and as a GM, when my players go off the rails and they avoid all the major encounters I planned for them, that's actually kind of fun because it lets me think on my feet. It makes the game much more dynamic, and it
yeah.
also gives them ownership over it. So
You
I
know, I-
always try to keep the player in mind.
yeah, absolutely. And I found that a lot of work could be done just really making sure that each element of the story you're giving people is perfect and covers all the bases. And you will find when it's exposed to people that aren't you, that they will take it in different directions, and oftentimes it can be a better direction.
Oh,
A
definitely.
more, yeah, yeah. That's very, very well said. And I think the other piece of this too, and just to not to put too fine a point on it, but you got to get good at taking criticisms.
Hmm.
And granted, in our space, whether it's video games or whether it's the tabletop role play world, the differences are people in the TTRPG space write more about what they don't like. They use bigger and longer words, but nobody should accept sort of abusive stuff or toxic stuff. But then that's why it's important, I think, too, to sort of outline what it is you're looking for. You hope that you get it ready for the public to the degree that they won't have this reaction. But I think you avoid some of that by making sure you pick people to really take a look at what you're doing, right?
It's definitely no man is an island, and
That's right.
it's important to take other people and their feelings into account. Um,
Yeah. y- Agreed. Yeah. But talk to me about now when you were putting this together. What sort of thoughts went into? Did you have a mind for the homebrew person?
Everything that I do, everything that I write or design is homebrew until somebody pays me for it and publishes it, right?
I see. I see.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think homebrew is I don't think it's a muscle everybody needs to exercise. There's a lot of people out there who are just happy to buy an adventure and run it out of the book.
Truth.
Um, but that's not to say that uh, homebrew doesn't have uh, a place. We as judges of the quality of things, I think homebrew rules that are created by creators online or your friends or you, I mean, they're just as valid as the rules in the book.
Agreed. Agreed. Very well said. And yeah, and that is true. When you look at, especially with the adventure game engine as a toolbox, and many people do, like Duke says, yeah, homebrew is my only muscle. Understood. And then, yeah, I like to just to step back real quick. Love Later said, unplayed games are more valuable than the played games. Think of the anti-library of Talib. I'm not sure I'm familiar with that. Inspired by Umbert Eco, who separates visitors into two categories: those who praise the size of his library, and those who recognize that a library is a tool for research. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I suppose that an unread book or an unplayed game is an opportunity to, increase your understanding of the unlimited facets of creative storytelling. Right? There's a
Mhm. And
lot to be done, and also a lot that depends on stuff that you've read, and you go, "Yeah, I'm going to borrow from that."
they also occasionally, for whatever reason, play a role in helping you decide what not to do.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, that's true. That's true. When it comes to that critical eye and for what you're building, yeah, there's a lot of cautionary tales out there littering the landscape for sure.
Mm, definitely.
Uh, I love that. Let's see. Okay, so um, when thinking about one of the things that we're trying to do in general is, the adventure game engine is so approachable. It's something that people can really wrap their heads around, but it takes a minute to get the context. And so thinking of a new GM, and we always love to encourage new jams because they're vital, important storytellers, some of the best storytellers that our world has known. Talk to me about some advice for a new GM who's picking up Dirge and they've grabbed Technofantasy. They are ready to roll. What should they know?
It's their world ultimately, and Technofantasy, it's a wonderful toolbox for coming up with adventures set in this sort of uh, milieu.
Yeah,
You can take any of it, you can take none of it, you can take all of it if you really want to, and it's all well plotted out, and it works. Um, don't be afraid to set boundaries with this material. If you don't want cybernetics in your techno fantasy game, then don't include cybernetics. If it doesn't match the tone or it doesn't match the story you're looking for, be you should be more than happy to exclude it. Um, but if you want to dump everything in, go right for it. As far as the adventure is concerned, for a new DM, it's always a good idea to steep yourself in the genre you want to present.
yeah.
Watch those kinds of movies, read those kinds of books and comics, uh, listen to music that brings about those feelings of whether it's nostalgia or whether it's something more like something you want to have, something you want to feel. Just let yourself go with it, um, because ultimately you are in charge.
I like it. I like it. Syrup just asks, will this adventure jive well with Titan's Grave being Age 1E based? Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
it'll jive well with all kinds of stuff. But that for sure it will. Let me see. I so in thinking about that, do you when you're immersing yourself in media, for let's focus on Dirge, what are some recommendations that you would have for folks to pick up to kind of get their head in the headspace of
Well, there's the standard, you know, going back to the whole Titans Grave thing. Thunder the Barbarian, as far back
yes.
as that it was a kids show.
It was campy, a little campy,
It
yeah,
was a
yeah.
little campy, and I don't think that you can't be campy in your games. I think humor is a vital component of a successful game, but uh, outside of that, it's like I said, Conan the Barbarian has always been uh, a big inspiration for me. The fiction of Robert E. Howard, the fiction of geez, even Tolkien. Tolkien does get dark.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of dark in Tolkien, and I know that he's been raked over the coals and whatnot, but he's also a product of his time. So you know, we don't need to hash that out. Um, there are things that could improve, and that's what we can do in our games. We can improve upon those, and we can make them more inclusive than the source material was.
I love that.
Mm,
I love that, and that is also it kind of goes back to the cautionary tale stuff. Look at this media and gain the inspiration that's appropriate, and dismiss what you don't need or it doesn't serve you. I like that. So we talked about yeah, Tolkien. Are there any good movies or I'm thinking of some classics myself, but I'm curious as to what your answer would be. What kind of a movie guy are you?
you put me on the spot.
I know, right? Yeah.
I like horror movies. I like sci-fi. I like dark sci-fi. Um,
Okay.
I'm not sure that much of the dark sci-fi that I'm into or have enjoyed relates directly to technofantasy, but you can mine anything for inspiration in that regard.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
let me think.
Well, let that noodle, let that kind of marinate for a minute. And do you do you have playlists? Or do you put together a musical collection of stuff to kind of keep you focused, or are you listening to music when you're developing or designing?
Generally, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so I'm an older guy, and I, it's very I pick up new music occasionally.
Yeah.
Like I'll discover something. I mean, hell, it was only 10 years ago I actually was listening to Iron Maiden, going, "Wow, why wasn't I listening to this when I was 20?" Jesus. There's that, but I'm kind of stuck in my ways, and there are things that I like. Frontline Assembly was one of the big techno industrial
Oh yeah.
groups from way back when. And as far as cyberpunk is concerned, I was a huge Cyberpunk 2020 DM in my youth, and
Yeah.
that was like part of my soundtrack. That and Ministry, um,
Oh sure.
Front
Yeah. Yeah.
242, Kraftwerk, that sort of stuff. So I was totally into that, and that sets the mood for a certain part of it.
Yeah.
But there's also uh, coincidentally, another side project by the folks from FLA was called Delirium. And the initial Delirium music was very ambient and very kind of dark and gothic. And eventually they kind of turned it into uh, a lot of ethereal female vocals and whatnot, which is it's like a complete switch from when they
Yeah.
started. But a lot of that older music, it's great. And they had another side project called Synesthesia, which was very ambient as well. So stuff like that is where I've pulled. I'll put that out on my playlist, and I'll listen to it. Lately, I'm not gonna lie, it's been a lot of Primus.
Sure. That's safe.
uh, but that's mostly to keep myself cheered up, uh, given the way things are in the
Yeah,
world.
yeah, yeah, yeah. In fighting form. What I was thinking of, old Ministry is a crack up in comparison to the later Ministry. It
You're talking
is.
like the original Ministry with
Yes, yes,
Sympathy, with
yes,
the
yes,
80s pop. Yes.
oh, it was just I do, I have some friends that really are, the hard ministry is kind of what they love, and then I'll put on some of that, and they'll be like, "What's this?" I'm like, "This is ministry. This is their roots." They hate it. They hate it. And by
Yes.
the way, David Bullock, do you mean Bollywood? What's Bloodywood? Is that I mostly do movie scores and Bloodywood. I don't even know if I want to ask that question. Tell me about that, David. When we need
Ah,
band.
he's summoning Richard.
Yeah, yeah. So in um, in your creative process, I know we kind of talked about that how that works for you, and we were talking about music and sort of resources to get people's head in the game and how that ought to work. Whether you're developing a new thing on your own or you're getting ready to play something, always nice to kind of immerse yourself in stuff. Talk to me about how you, as a DM, as a GM, how you manage a table. What are some of the things that you do that are unique, or things that you have shortcuts you found, or ways that you do your thing that that you think people might benefit from?
Well, I like my players to have backstories for their characters
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that I don't necessarily have any part in creating. I might have some influence in it, obviously, and some players are happy to play without much backstory. But I like to tailor my adventures to the players and their
Oh,
characters.
it's nothing better. As a player, I will tell
Yeah,
you that it is so fun to just be like, wait, what did they say? What is this person saying? And to tie
yeah.
it to your background, it's really fun.
It may be obvious, but having a player come up with their backstory and then introducing that backstory as part of the main story or a side quest, even it makes them feel seen. It makes
Yeah,
them feel important to the adventure because, and then obviously being egalitarian about that, making sure that each player gets that kind of attention is also really important too.
agreed.
As
Yeah,
long as
well,
that's something that they as a player want.
yeah, a point well made, because there is it is very important to apportion your time so that everyone has some time at the bike, but that tailoring the experience to them and bringing up a bit of their past as a part of the story really knocks them right out of any kind of trepidation, or maybe they're not sure, not connecting, and they're just boom right in the story. I mean, that's just
Mhm.
such a great way to do that.
But
Yeah,
the thing
lots
about it
lots
is also is you have to
yeah.
listen to your players as well, because a player might not necessarily want you to take their story and run in a certain direction with it. So you
Yeah,
really need to be cognizant of what your players are interested in before you take what they've created and change it into something that they didn't expect or don't like.
that's right. Okay, and that's a fair point. And I think that a lot of those opportunities to gather that intel from players happens. It can happen during a session zero, but there's so much to be done. I'm imagining that a lot of this conversation happens outside of that as well. Like, what does your workflow look like when you're running a game for some people?
I will tell them. we'll have like a session 0 where we make the characters and we define our characters, we define the basis of the story and get things started. And I'll usually say, hey, if you want to put together a backstory of any length for your character, feel free. If you want to work together with me on that, that's fine too. I just want to develop some plot points that I can pick and choose from to
Yeah.
tailor the story to my players. Uh, and that's a conversation. And like game development in general, any creative pursuit where you're working with others, this is a game. It's not something you're going to publish necessarily, but it's, it's a form of entertainment and it's collaborative. Then communication is really important.
Yeah.
Knowing what your players are interested in, what they don't want. Also, going back to safety, some
Yes.
players, if you don't like spiders, you might not want to have spiders in the game.
If you're not a
For
fan of three-headed millipedes or whatever,
yeah,
maybe that's
that
yeah,
too, yeah. But
yeah.
yeah, I think knowing your players it's really important, not only as friends, but as what kind of likes and dislikes do they have? What kind of expectations do they have?
Right. Okay, interesting. Yeah, and then that is very true. And I will say this, that if you're not running a game for close friends, when you're into it up to your eyeballs in the story, you become very close friends. And
Yes.
so, yeah, it's one of those opportunities to really understand who they are. You will say that there are people that I've played with where my friendships have deepened and has been stronger because of the engagement. And I think that having that sort of mindset when you open the doors on this thing, it changes the way that it's played and the way that they give you feedback. And, all of that stuff is really, really super important and much better to do it to front load all of that than to find out accidentally in the midst of it all. Now, do you use
Yeah.
any kind of specific safety rules or sort of mechanisms? How do you manage that for yourself?
Usually it's a matter of just asking my players if they have any, if there's anything they'd like to avoid.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Monty Cook it was a Sean King Reynolds Monty Cook thing where it was like
We
what
talk
was
about
it?
it often. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just trying to remember what it was called. It's basically about safety in your games. And there's actually a little worksheet in that product. It's a free product that you can download,
Yeah.
which you can give to your players, and it's got a list of things like
Yeah.
they
Like
don't like
consent engaged,
blood
like
or
the,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
even going so far as to say, how do you feel about sexual content in your games? Now, I don't usually bring sexual content into my games at all, so that's not usually a problem for me. Um, but
But if that's something that folks are, thinking about or, even entertaining, yeah, it's a tremendous resource. We
ah,
love it around here, and yeah, I've dropped it in chat so folks can
yep,
grab
consent
it
and
for
gaming.
themselves.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think that's a really good tool for players and GMs who are interested in making sure that nobody uh, has a problem with the content in the game. That
yeah, I love
there are
that.
no unpleasant surprises.
And it's like anything else. Just be prepared and ready by, understanding what's happening and how people feel about things. It is a wonderful tool and an opportunity for you to get to know your friends better and the people that you're playing with. So, and it's hard to argue against the notion of creating a better place for people to feel comfortable and enjoy themselves to the best of their ability.
Hmm.
I think it's a key component of being a good, responsible contributor to the TTRPG community.
And that's what we're here for. We're here to have
That's
fun.
100%. That's the other thing too. Let's have fun and let's do that by sidestepping any unnecessary trauma, for sure. Um, so what's funny, Gary, is we were just ramping up into this conversation around you know how the intention and mindfulness, the sort of approach and the expertise and sort of all of that stuff, and we have about 5 minutes left of the show. So
It's just gone by really fast.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's fantastic. Lines and veils and all that. Yeah, Duke. So one of the things, oh yeah, yeah. So listen, I know you, I love you, loved working with you, was so excited to see your name on this cover. And I'm wondering, like, is there a place where people can find you? Are you one of those guys that are sort of out there with the public sort of persona?
My social media it's kind of confined to LinkedIn as far as like work stuff is concerned, like my day
Yeah.
job. As far as I've got a Blue Sky account where I post a lot.
Okay.
Um, and I started a Patreon rather, about a
Oh,
month ago, and it's not, it's kind of specialized. because I'm a big Star Wars fan. I've always loved the Star Wars RPG. I have
Yeah.
played every edition of the Star Wars role playing game that has ever come out. Um, and so there's not a lot of support for the current system out there. And so the things that I do during the games I run, the things I come up with, I'm taking that and I'm turning it into little plugins that people can use in their own Star Wars role playing games. And I generally try to do it for the old West End Games D6 system as well as the newer Fantasy Flight Games system.
Got
Um,
it.
and so I offer these little things for folks on my Patreon. Um,
Okay, fantastic. So what's the so on Blue Sky you are Barrier Peaks, is that right? Or
that's
sorry, that
correct.
was okay, great. I'm going to drop a link to that. And something that you might be interested in. So I am a part of a group that meets every Tuesday of Patreon TTRPG creators. It's an accountability club that I run for Patreon,
Oh wow.
and yeah, and we've got hundreds of people, but any given meeting, it's like anywhere from 7 to 15. When it gets large, it's a little unruly, but it's really, yeah. I'll send you some information about it, and you maybe come and hang out with some phenomenal creators. Really,
I would love to.
yeah, yeah. But and folks who've really cracked the code on the Patreon, and then as far as the Patreon goes, what is your
It's called Homebrew by Design. So
nice?
yeah.
Let me and is it patreon.com/homebrew by design or
Uh, yes, Homebrew by Design, all one long thing. Word.
perfect? Yeah, yeah. One long thing word says word guy. Excellent.
Words are hard. Words are hard.
Nice. Okay, great. You got some great tiers. This is great stuff. Let me drop that link in chat. And then, of course, you're always ready to do some TTRPG design work, right?
You know what? If I have the time, I would love to.
Fantastic. All right. Well, so they can look you up on LinkedIn. Sometimes we even broadcast to LinkedIn when I'm feeling like I want to, sort of tweak the LinkedIn crowd. They are wild over there. They are the weirdest group of people. But listen, friend, you know who's not weird? You. I know you're weird in the right ways, and I love it, and I appreciate you taking the time to come hang out and let our folks know what Dirge of Valiros is all about. And with that in mind, do you have any thoughts or things you would like to share? Any final words for your now new fans?
Now you're making me feel self-conscious. But no, no. Have fun. Life is too short. Focus on what makes you happy, what makes your friends happy, and do that. Don't let anybody tell you you're wrong.
I love that. Yeah. Do your thing and have fun doing it. Now, friends, that link that I dropped for you to look at, you can join for free and follow all the things that Gary's doing, and I highly, highly recommend it. One of my favorite folks to work with, and one of my favorite folks to have been on Thursday. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No problem. If you ever need me back, just let me know.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we should do that. We should have you back and get a little deeper into the meta of game development and design. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
All right.
Eric, we're gonna bust into this real quick. Look, friends, look how much is going on here. You see that golden Thursdays? That's for Gary. Are very uh, you know what a well-rounded creative person who's got some real sense and some real understanding of how the mechanics of games and people work together. I think that's really awesome stuff. So thank you to Gary for that. On Monday it's Mumamo. You want to make sure you come in. Oh, you know what, actually it's not going to be Mumamo. I may be out of town. We'll give you some updates as soon as I know a little more. I'm thinking, so I'm headed to DC for reasons, and we'll be there for 4 days. And my return date is on Monday, and I've tried to make it so that it'd be in the evening, but time and travel and all that good stuff. But I will be here on the 9th in the tank and the atomic think tank. If you go to atomicthinktank.com, you will be able to join up with other folks who are doing all kinds of stuff for the adventure game engine, from homebrew to every one of our titles are represented. You can come and hang out, share ideas and resources and those sorts of things. But on Wednesday we do office hours, where I just throw a Zoom link out to the world, and you can come and hang out and ask questions, get more detail, get information. If there's something that you've been waiting for me to do and you were looking for, or you just have an idea, or you just want to hang out and talk about. I mean, I'm trying to think of what we talked about last night. We were all over the place. We watched a Mutants and Masterminds live stream. We just had a blast while I worked on getting things ready for today's announcement of the launch of Dirge of Valiros. So yeah, come hang out. We've got all good stuff. And then of course the next Thursday, which I think we might try to bring our buddy Malcolm on. Malcolm was going to join us today. He was feeling under the weather for a bit, and then Canada was stricken by a really devastating ice storm that has pulled all the power, all the broadband, everything is just waiting to be repaired. So we'll get him on here. Thank you, David. Do me a favor, and folks, make sure that you are liking and subscribing and sharing the link with people that you know and love. Let them know what we're doing here on the channel, and it really helps. Adding, if you're listening on demand, you want to look at the chat. There's a lot of good stuff going on there. But feel free to leave a question on wherever you're at, and we'll dive in and provide you an answer, or pretend like we didn't see it if we don't know. So with that, friends, thank you again for listening and hanging out. Thank you to Gary for all of the great insight into the Dirge of Valiros, which you can pick up in the Green Ronin Online Store and Drive Through RPG. You'll find the links in the show notes. Thank you, everybody.